Next would be battery research. Lithium-ion batteries, very important, and the question would be, how should the government get involved in it without interfering with what private businesses are doing? One way, of course, to do it is through the new energy DARPA that was enacted last year, like the DARPA in the Defense Department, or through our national laboratories, some of which are already deeply involved in that. A fifth thing that would be important would be accelerated depreciation for smart meters. If you're going to put together an electric car with nighttime electricity, it helps if the consumer understands the smart meter. I drove one of A123's cars today. The driver told me that he gave it a charge for less than $1 at night, and by doing that with his basic plug-in Prius, he took his car from 40 or 50 miles a gallon to over 100 miles a gallon. But if we can say to Americans, say TVA can say, plug in at night, fill up your charge for $1 or $2 instead of $70 or $80 or $90, and we'll charge you a little more between 4 o'clock and 10 o'clock, we might be able to electrify a big part of our workforce, of our fleet, without building new power plants. Next, carbon capture. Carbon capture is essential if we're going to continue to burn coal, which if we're going to electrify the fleet, we must do in the near term. We all have a vision of an energy future that doesn't burn so much fossil fuel, but that is some way off, and we need a bridge to that future. And if we can find a way to deal with carbon, we already know how to deal with sulfur, nitrogen, and mercury, then we can use our coal and we can still be more independent in terms of our energy sources. Finding ways to deal with carbon capture, not just putting it in the ground, but algae solutions or other chemical solutions that might develop is essential, it seems to me, if we're serious about electrifying the fleet to any great extent. And then in terms of coal plants, we might as well bite the bullet and say on their 40th birthday, all the old dirty coal plants ought to have to meet the higher standards for clean air, but use them, and helpfully show the rest of the world how to have a coal plant that doesn't pollute. Finally, I know many of you support the idea of tax credits. Senator Hatch has a bill like that has good support in the Senate. That's a little more intrusive, I would say, with tax credits. What we ought to try to do is make sure that we think of tax credits or direct government support for technology as something we should do for a limited period of time and not as a permanent subsidy. And then there's the question of the battery guarantees. We've had some discussion about that. Mr. Sandelow has talked about that in his book. It's an interesting idea as well. It's a little more complicated for the government to be involved. Now, there are a number of suggestions for plug-in electric vehicles, but my main message tonight is that this is a time when we ought to be working together. I'm working with Bart Gordon, the House Science Committee Chairman. He's a Democrat, I'm a Republican. Jeff Bingaman, the Senate Energy Committee Chairman, Pete Domenici. What we're trying to do is see if we can put a consensus together of whether you call it a moonshot or a Manhattan Project, some way with the advice of scientists to say what grand challenges should we undertake in order to put ourselves within the next 5 years firmly on a path to clean energy independence. And if we can do that by this fall, then perhaps we can say to the new president and the new Congress, let's do that. Let's do that. And I'm sure that if we do that, plug-in electric vehicles will continue to be at the top of my list. Thank you very much.